1965. I am currently standing, with you dear viewers, next to a fatefully important location for the psychedelic rock scene of the 1960s. Here, at the Venice Beach, in Los Angeles, California, two fellow students of the UCLA Film School met for the second time. One of them was Jim Morrison, and the other Ray Manzarek. As the two of them were catching up, Jim showed Ray some of his poems, and Ray was heavily inspired by them. Exactly then, Ray made the crucial suggestion to Jim. They should form a band.
The four of us were then taking legal LSD.
Right.
Still,
it wasn't made illegal till 1966.
Yeah, this was 64, 5.
At this point, you might be wondering, who is this drummer chap being interviewed? And how can we bring back the legality of LSD? I can only answer one of those two questions. Let's rewind.
You and Robby Krieger played together in a band before the formation of the Doors, and the name of that band was the Psychedelic Rangers.
This laughing man right here is John Densmore. As the interviewer explained some seconds ago, prior to joining the Doors, he was in a band called Psychedelic Rangers, and alongside him was Robby Krieger.
John, how did the two of you meet, and when did you meet?
Oh, boy. Wow.
High school.
You're straining my brain cells. High school, yeah.
Yeah. And we actually formed a band, John and I, and we called it the Psychedelic Rangers.
Do you remember when you first met Jim Morrison?
Yeah, I do. John had met the other guys and was actually playing with them. Then they needed a new guitar player, and so John brought Jim over to my house, and I played them some stuff, which I think they liked. And you know, to me, Jim was just a normal guy. That he didn't seem anything out of the ordinary, but he had these words, you know, that they showed me, and I knew that those were pretty unusual.
And when did you first meet him, John?
At the Maharishi meditation, Ray, the keyboard player, said, "Hey, I hear you're a drummer. Come on over to my garage and we'll jam." So I go to the garage, and lurking in the corners, this guy, bare feet, t-shirt and cords, really shy. I mean, Ray says, "This is Jim, the singer." And I'm like, "Are you kidding?" But then he hands me some lyrics. Day destroys the night, night divides the day, tried to run, tried to hide, break on through to the other side. I'm like, wow, I want to drum to that immediately.
Therefore, that's how the band got together. But still, one question remained. What about their name?
The Doors got their name from the title of a book called The Doors of Perception by Aldous Huxley. But Aldous Huxley, who was a known author and essayist and psychedelic drug user, got that title from another writer, William Blake, the Romantic poet from England. Now, the actual line of the poem is, and I'll read it right now, "If the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite." Sounds kind of like a Jim Morrison lyric, right? I hope that helped you break on through to the other side of how the Doors got their name.
Name? Robby Krieger. Age? 22 years old.
Occupation?
Guitar.
Robert Allen Krieger was born on January 8, 1946 in Los Angeles, California. His father, an engineer, listened to classical music, and his mother was a fan of crooners like Frank Sinatra. And so young Robby's musical tastes growing up were a bit different than his peers. At first, Robby took a ukulele and detuned the strings to mimic guitar tuning, slowly teaching himself chords and scales at night. His first band was an outfit called the Back Bay Chamber Pot Terriers, who played a number of genres, and Robby would mostly focus on flamenco styles, folk, blues, and jazz in those early days. But in 1965, fate would intervene in Robby's career, and he would find himself in some strange days. The band that would eventually become The Doors was formed from the ashes of a band that keyboardist Ray Manzarek had formed with his two brothers Rick and Jim, called Rick and the Ravens. Drummer John Densmore was in the band through his friendship with Ray through meditation classes. Surfing, meditation, jug bands. Did I mention this was California in the 60s?
Name?
John Densmore.
Age?
23.
Occupation?
Percussionist.
John Densmore, the drummer, really was pretty much a jazz
drummer.
drummer.
Well, he studied percussion, and he's he can read drum music. Have you ever seen drum music? It's like impossible to read. I don't know how they do it. Yeah, but John was the main man in the in his high school marching band. He was the lead snare drummer. So your time had to be really precise because you're in charge. Otherwise, you've got 50 people marching off in circles and around. So John was so he was always steady as a rock, man.
In Los Angeles, California, you had John Densmore, who was also influenced by the jazz drummers of the time. But what made him different was that he incorporated more Latin jazz styles into the music, or just Latin beats in general. And that's what made him different and what made the Doors really unique.
Name?
Raymond Daniel Manzarek.
Age?
Born 2/12/39.
Occupation?
Musician, organist.
Manzarek was raised in Chicago and grew up with a passion for jazz and blues. He kept that passion in his keyboard work as he shaped the sound of the band that backed Jim Morrison.
Biblically, 40 days and 40 nights after we said our goodbyes, after graduation, I'm sitting on the beach wondering what I'm going to do with myself. Who comes walking down the beach but James Douglas Morrison? And I said, Jim, come on over here, man. And I said, well, what have you been up to? So what's going on? And he said, well, I've been living up on Dennis Jacobs' rooftop, consuming a bit of LSD, and writing songs. And I said, whoa, writing songs. Okay, man, cool. Sing me a song, And he said, oh, I'm kind of shy, because I knew he was a poet. He knew I was a musician. I said, sing me a song. So he sat down on the beach, dug his hands into the sand, and the sand started streaming out in little rivulets, and he kind of closed his eyes, and he began to sing in a Chet Baker haunted whisper kind of voice. He began to sing Moonlight Drive, and when I heard that first stanza,
let's swim to the moon, let's climb through the tide, penetrate the evening that the city sleeps too high.
Well, Jim was a very intelligent, bright young man, and behaved himself pretty well, really. And he liked to write and draw pictures.
He was an avid reader. He read everything, and then he also wrote. He would write he had a book, and this was in high school, he would learn a new word, and then he'd write a whole story around it. So his vocabulary was incredible.
He told me, you'd be at a party, and it'd be the most beautiful chicks and the best drugs, and everyone's, feeling it. And then Jim Morrison would show up, shove someone down the stairs, and then go lay in the street until the cops come. He goes, that's bullshit, He, fuck up the whole scene. And I was like, it's kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of punk.
It's safe to say that the Doors were quite unique when it came to their sound and their lyrics, something that made them widely loved in their era. However, their journey musically wasn't all uphill. Their debut album, named charismatically The Doors, was released by Elektra Records in 1967. It charted at number 2 on the US Billboard Top 200 and produced the group's most successful single, Light My Fire. Their second studio album, Strange Days, was also released in 1967. It sold well commercially, but did not reach the same level of success as the debut. Nevertheless, it reached number 3 on the Billboard Top 200 and was certified platinum in the US and Canada. The Doors' third studio album, Waiting for the Sun, released in 1968, was commercially very successful. It reached number 1 in the US and France and produced their second number 1 single, Hello, I Love You. Waiting for the Sun was the first Doors album to chart in the United Kingdom, therefore igniting the first spark for international praise. For the fourth studio album, The Soft Parade, released 1969, the Doors decided to incorporate string and brass instruments into a number of their songs. The band was criticized by many for this, and referred to as pop sellouts and having gone soft. Despite the backlash, The Soft Parade became the band's fourth straight top 10, and it produced their third most successful single, Touch Me. To counter the artistic criticism of their last two albums, the Doors next released Morrison Hotel, in which the band returned to their blues rock style, and as a positive result, the album was largely seen as a returned form for the band. The group next released Absolutely Live, a live album containing snippets of performances edited together from 14 different concerts recorded in 9 different cities in 1969 and 1970. Absolutely Live was well received and charted in the top 10 in the US and Canada, and it was certified gold in both countries. LA Woman, released in 1971, was the final Doors album before a certain impactful event. The album was praised by critics and did very well commercially. It landed in the top 10 in the US and Canada and produced 2 hit singles, Love Her Madly and Riders on the Storm. Just like in Morrison Hotel, the Doors included the heavy blues vibes on this album that they were known for. LA Woman was certified gold and platinum in several different countries.
This is the end, beautiful friend.
Jim Morrison was a brilliant poet, philosopher, and songwriter, but some of his habits were becoming more and more prevalent as the years passed. He was, allegedly, a drug user and a heavy drinker, which often made him late and in bad shape in live concerts. The Miami incident, which placed Jim Morrison under custody for profanity and indecent exposure, put a pause on the band's career. On the 3rd of July, 1971, while free because of a pending appeal on his case, Jim Morrison was found dead in the apartment he was staying at in Paris. The cause of death was likely heart failure, but since an autopsy was never conducted, because it wasn't required by the French authorities at the time, many people didn't believe the news. No matter whether Jim was alive or not, the band wouldn't go very far without him. The 3 remaining members released 2 more studio albums before they eventually disbanded, Other Voices in 1971 and Full Circle in 1972. Both albums did well, but the success was limited, so the 3 began their solo ventures. Several years later, Raymond Zarek died after a long battle with cancer, in the 20th of May 2013. And so, John and Robby are the ones still alive to this day. The Doors' name is one set in stone as a legendary, timeless band of the 60s. Their eclipse left a massive hole in the rock genre ever since. But you know what they say, when a door closes, just cleanse it.